Okay, so this final study discusses one of the world's biggest conflict transformation camps and how that can teach us why it's important to intentionally create opportunities for intergroup contact. So again, kind of in line with what we've been talking about, how intergroup contact can really shape how conflicts occur, why they occur, and how they are resolved. The three questions are: how might similarity and propinquity interact to influence relationship formation? How does propinquity facilitate in-group and out-group relationships roughly equally? This is the null hypothesis. And then, does propinquity mitigate homophily, facilitating out-group relationships that wouldn't otherwise form? This is the mitigation hypothesis. So the methods to test this hypothesis, the authors of the study collected 7 years of data from Jewish, Israeli, and Palestinian teenagers attending a 3-week summer camp at Seeds of Peace. Since the researchers were testing for 2 independent variables, similarity and propinquity, they considered multiple types of propinquity through 3 different activity groups at the camp. So dialogue groups, table groups, and bunks. And then they then looked at the effect of each group separately. So participant pre-camp measures on the first day, they all completed a survey that collected basic demographic information. And then the participant post-camp relationships, on the last day, they completed a second survey in which they listed up to 5 or 10 other participants to whom they felt the most close. So it seems as though that last study was kind of how they measured the effectiveness of these claims, so to speak, or the effect of those claims. And we can move to the next slide. The authors found that propinquity was significantly more impactful for reinforcing outgroup relationships, and sharing an activity group is especially powerful for those more dissimilar pairs, which makes sense because those people are less likely to spontaneously engage with outgroup members in ways that promote relationships. So this essentially reiterates that structured, meaningful engagement can counter homophily, and that certain types of interactions are more effective than others, such as having conversations, so through dialogue, or bunk groups as ways to build relationships and kind of have activities as opposed to like a table group. And then the key takeaway is basically that it's important for management and leadership to promote and support employees to connect more with those they may not already have pre-existing connections with, which again makes sense. And that structured and meaningful engagement, so making sure that the engagement that you're promoting is purposeful and intentional, has to be organized routinely to counteract homophily. And researchers have strategically worked out pairing members of the outgroup together with the in-group by putting them in the same activity or the same group. So again, kind of going back to strategizing how you, as management or leadership, are creating and promoting these initiatives. And then workplaces too should also create opportunities for interactions between different employees through intentionally pairing up for teams or projects. Noah, could you go to the slide before really quickly?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. I just had a question about something. I'm gonna look at the study again, but anyway, while I'm doing that, feel free to, anyone who has any thoughts about this, jump in with your thoughts.
I like the study. This is pretty cool.
Yeah, me too.
It goes along with the last few weeks. I mean, the last few studies that we've been talking about are all promoting sort of the structures in place to then enhance like the in-group, out-group dynamic and cross-cultural kind of relationships. And so this just supports that even more. Also something to add to the best practices for conflict management plan, right?
Yeah, yeah, and adding on to that like sort of that positive or constructive intergroup contact, where it's just not like let's get everyone together, but let's actually have them, you know, participate in a shared goal, or like have some, you know, sort of like make salient some sort of common identity for them, something meaningful.
Yeah, the intention, like I think that's what this study was highlighting, right? Like they're like making sure that the intention behind the actions or whatever the structured plan is.
Yeah, I think that's important, Sarah, that you're being intentional, because I can not count how many times I've been in like a conversation about race relations or like conflict resolution, like things in my childhood and in my life, and they all seem very like check the box let's like get this over with so we can say that we have made an effort to create an environment that's inclusive. And particularly with like inclusion and diversity programs, which is like a kind of tangent off of intergroup contact. I feel like a lot of times they're ineffective because they're not really intentional in the ways in which they try to create inclusion and diversity. So I definitely think it's important that how and why these different efforts are executed are very crucial to the effectiveness of these efforts themselves.
Well, yeah, and it's like, it seems like having people engage in like group activities, like meaningful activities towards shared goals, and like, you know, doing things where like, hey, we want to improve cross-cultural relationships here. We don't necessarily have to have them in a dialogue talking about cross-cultural relations or their relationships. We could have them doing some activity together, and that just by default increases their ability to like feel compatible and like each other and have fun working together and that sort of thing.
That's why a lot of the youth programs that are kind of designed with and more cross-cultural. I mean, my grad school has a huge kind of international youth programs every summer that bring together kids from potentially like the in-group and the out-group from a different, from a similar nation state of some sort. And yeah, they like they do Palestinian and Israeli teenagers just like this. They do, you know, Mexican and U.S. students together. They've done Northern Ireland and like Southern Ireland. Those like because what is it, the Protestant and Catholic divide there. So in a lot of their programs, because they're youth oriented, right? So the transgenerational trauma that gets passed down, like that's still there. There's still that kind of somewhat of a hostile kind of relationship or like perception of the other. And so they don't necessarily have guided conversations that are talking about the issues. It's really just like your average kind of youth camp where you're doing fun activities and those in itself, the intention there, I would feel, and it kind of like this research is supporting that, the proximity, right? They're talking about that, the proper, I can't say that word, but it means proximity, right? Like being close to one another. Like how are you engaged? Are you standing near them? That really enhances the negative perception of the other.
Yeah, it's.
Or I'm sorry, the other way around. Enhances the positive perception of the other.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it seems like a great, you know, especially working with young people who really maybe most of what they know about the conflict with the other group has just been passed down by other generations. They haven't actually experienced it except for the fact that it's been passed down, and then they sort of manifest it because it's been passed down. So like if they're engaged in these kind of activities, maybe we can, you know, mitigate or counteract the conflict identity, the group conflict identity that they've kind of bought into. Hey, we are this group and we are against that group, you know. And if you get them to start interacting with the other group, yeah, maybe we can counteract that, just, you know, even unconsciously.
Yeah, and so in the workplace, I mean, this could be just across departments, not even just cultures, not like ethnic or religious background, but your departments, right? So how many times do we see like miscommunications between organizations, like departments in different organizations? So maybe if there were just more structured kind of events where they're all interacting, that would help mitigate communication issues in the future, or
even just two individuals not communicating well, and just put them on a team together, you know.
Mm-hmm.
As long as they're both willing to participate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So from now on, I think we should change our peacemaking structure. Instead of having them do dialogues, let's just like get them to do an activity together. let's put a scavenger hunt together and tell the two people have to go on a scavenger hunt.
Yes.
That would do it.
I mean, that's why I'm such a like a little component cheerleader for team building activities, especially with people that are in conflict. Like, just taking the serious nature of it out of the conversation is powerful, and I think a good place to start.
Yeah, I agree. I wonder if there's some good research on like team building activities with regard specifically to conflicts, to like resolving conflicts. I haven't seen anything like that. I see a lot of team building research, but not specifically with like how it affects conflict resolution or conflict. Could be interesting. Well, cool. Thanks.